this view.
It's crazy.
Is this fantastic?
It's insane. I love it. This is cool. And this whole place is just going downhill.
Wow, that's cool. That facade is just awesome.
I think great. That's what's holding it back. There's not a boring street in this town.
On the road we're riding Jason, on a routine expedition. Now the deepest cavern ever known. Down on the rapids, it's something tiny rat. It goes on down 1,000 feet below.
So it's hard for me to talk about Jerome without talking about what Jerome was 100 years ago. So these trees are actually on top of a bridge here, which is kind of weird. But the road to Jerome follows 89A out of Prescott, up and over Mingus Mountain and down through Jerome. And now it's a nice 2-lane highway, but it started out being just a horse trail, and then it was a wagon trail, and then it was a road you'd take your Model A on, and that's what this road is. This is part of the old road here. So if we go down below the bridge, you can see that this bridge is now sporting trees, but of course it didn't used to be that way. It used to be a highway. So you'd get in your Model A and you'd drive out from Prescott, you'd drive up and over the mountain and up this windy little, what started as a dirt road and eventually became a paved road to get to Jerome. The bridge is made out of concrete, which was the material of the future when it was built. So early 1900s, not much was made out of concrete. It was made out of wood or masonry, and concrete really revolutionized the West, and certainly Jerome, because you could just build a mold, pour a thing, and have a thing. So buildings, bridges, walls, stairs, everything was made out of poured concrete. Jerome was pretty much 2 days from anywhere. Jerome was founded in 1876, and it was founded specifically because of the copper claim there. And it rapidly became one of the biggest cities in the entire West just because of that. And this is the old hand-built road that used to take you into Jerome. But we get to drive it fast, which is very nice because it's really fun.
If concrete was the earliest 20th century date stamp, what was the early 20th century tramp stamp?
You weren't allowed to show that much flesh unless you were a miner. Minor, not minor.
Yes.
Here, we're at the top of Mingus Mountain on our way down to Jerome. And if you look this way, you would have been able to see Sedona and the whole Verde Valley. And right now you can only see a little tiny piece of it, because when this highway was built, there were no trees here. All of these trees, almost every single one of these ponderosa pines you see, is only about 70, 80 years old. Every single one of them is new because they were all cut down for Jerome. If you look at pictures of this from the early 1900s, there's no trees here anywhere. So all of these are new trees. You find pretty much no old growth trees in this area. So you think of Jerome as being the little town on the side of the hill, but Jerome actually extended miles beyond its boundaries. So out here, you have these power lines that ran from Fort Whipple all the way to Jerome, but you also have signs of the past everywhere, like these old cans that are all over the place. Pretty much anywhere you get off the road and go for a little walk, you're going to find the rusty relics of past times. past recreation, past people going, oh, well, this is a beautiful place. Let's drink this and throw it out the window. It makes for interesting archaeology, even if they were litter bugs. So if you look at these spindly looking power lines, I mean, this is just lightweight angle iron cable ties. If you look at that ladder up there, it's like super sketchy. But none of this stuff was built to last because it wasn't meant to last. These mines were supposed to be here 20, 30, 40 years, so nothing was built to last any longer than that. The fact that it did last is only a testament to a high dry climate where you don't see a lot of rain, you don't see a lot of moisture, there's not a lot of snow, you know, things that would break things down if you lived in the Midwest or the East Coast, they just don't break down here. So they stay here for forever. Okay, I think we're gonna have to go back this way a little bit.
It's always easiest to find the first time.
Yeah.
For those playing along at home, please don't go into abandoned mines.
Look down there. So that's the Jerome Grand Shaft. That goes all the way down to join up with the mines underneath the mountain and underneath Jerome. But out here, it's, you know, we're way out here. Let's see if we can hear how deep this hole is. Sploosh. Sometimes this is blowing massive amounts of air. It has to do with the difference in barometric pressure outside versus inside. And so sometimes there's a wind coming up out of here. They actually leave these open with bars across them so bats can get in and out because these become bat hibernaculums in different months of the year. So they keep them open to keep them ventilated.
How deep do you think that is?
Well, Jerome overall, like the mines under Jerome, they go down almost a mile vertically. So, you know, 4,500 feet, I believe, is the deepest level, which we're just above, we're about 5,500 feet here. So that's almost sea level, which is crazy to think about. Yeah. Onward. This is the old highway we're on right now. So the old wagon road. But this would have been the way you would drive into Jerome from Fort Whipple. Really from anywhere. If you wanted to get to Jerome from Phoenix, you'd have to take this road, which is wild. Think of how much time it would take you to drive from Phoenix to Flagstaff in, say, an old Ford Model T. My grandpa used to say in the 1930s it would take him a whole day if your car didn't break down, and your car always broke down. But in a little Model A Ford or Model T or a horse-drawn wagon, you're talking about like a week of travel?
20 miles a day?
20 miles a day? Yeah, maybe. Considering a gas tank would only hold you about 20 miles of fuel in a Model T. Again, if your car didn't break down, and it was going to break down.
And you don't see a lot of service station and convenience store ruins out here?
Not out here, no. But that's why Route 66 has little micro towns, sometimes ghost towns, every 20 miles, because that's how long a gas tank would last. And this is where we get our sauces. Meh. Is this officially a hike yet, or is it still a walk?
I think this is still a walk.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, here we go. Now that's significantly old. If you're old enough, you can remember when you used to open cans like that. But if you have a can opener, it's got that pointy thing on it. That's what it's for, opening these juice cans, pineapple juice or something like that. But that's probably about 100 years old. Leave it here for the next person to find. I think this is why I have really bad posture, because I spend a lot of my hikes doing this. Here we have a mix of the new and the old. If you're old enough to remember these pull tabs, fun fact, these are now protected by the Antiquities Act because they're older than 50 years. So it's actually illegal to pick them up. Or take them home, I should say. There's more drink cans. People have been throwing their trash out here for a long time. Budweiser, king of beers. That's actually a really cool one. The first piece of purple glass I found today. So this guy is purple because the lead in the glass causes the glass to turn purple over time. So anytime you find a piece of glass with purple in it, it's probably over 100 years old, because that's when they used to do that. But old bottles weren't originally this color. They turned this color after being in the sun.
And good to know people were drinking out of bottles with lead in them.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, there's a bunch of it. Now that's the basement old square bottle. I would love to find the rest of it. But the rest of it's all in pieces all along here.
How old do you think this is?
Well, it's concrete. So probably around 100 years, probably built in the 1920s or 19-teens.
How old do you think this is?
Well, it's concrete. So probably around 100 years, probably built in the 1920s or 19-teens. I feel like you can only really get a sense of this town if you go down the back streets. There's so much here to see that's, well, lost in plain sight, right? Hey, he just said the name of the show! Yeah. Man, this town is just on the edge, right? It is just barely clinging to the cliff. And definitely more visible when you go down 5th Street here, which you almost have to use controlled descent to get down a street like this. If you look to the side, you can see just how stacked these houses are, one on top of the other. It's really something.
So how many people used to live here in their heyday?
So 100 years ago, in Jerome's heyday, it had a population of 15,000. And just take a guess at how many people live here now.
1,500.
It is, as of latest census, 464 people.
Wow.
And that's it.
And 362 of them work for Maynard.
Yeah. Look at this garage here, like clinging to the roof of this house. Being a building inspector out here must be insane. It looks like they're working on this one.
It doesn't seem like they have many building inspectors out here. Or would
Doesn't seem
need
like
them.
So we're kind of just below downtown here, and the buildings tell a story and the dirt and rocks tell a story, but the plants tell a story too. These things are called Tree of Heaven. They kind of suck. They were brought here by miners in the early days because the nice thing about them is you can throw them in the ground and they will grow a tree 6 feet tall in 2 weeks in the spring. But as you can see, they also grow pretty tall and pretty thick, and they develop these big thickets. And one of the problems with them, they grow super fast. You can see this one was cut down and it's growing right away. They grow super fast, but they also develop these thickets, and they also secrete a chemical that kills pretty much anything that wants to be near it. So once these thickets take over, it's really hard to get rid of them. They clone through the root systems like aspen and other trees do. And once they develop those big thickets of trees, they're almost impossible to get rid of.
Did they get brought here for a reason?
Yes, they're quick shade, quick and easy shade. And in a town where you have totally taken everything off the hillside, to make your town, to build it out of timbers, then you've got to have shade again. And what better thing than to create trees that grow super fast? Then you've got a ready source of wood. It's a pretty crappy wood to build with, but you can still build with it. So let's wander up to downtown. All right, I got to stop myself mid-sneeze here because I got some of those details wrong about the ailanthus tree, the tree of heaven. So it turns out that they weren't brought in by miners. In the 1950s, the mayor realized that because the hillside had been so denuded and so stripped of trees from the pollution from the mine, the town started to slide downhill, and he got the bright idea to plant these trees to help anchor the hillside. And so he went up in a plane with a 40-pound bag of these seeds and dumped them all over Jerome from an airplane. And it worked. These trees started growing really quickly and helped anchor the town in place. Now the trees are very invasive and almost impossible to get rid of, but they did save Jerome. And now they're all over the Verde Valley. I mean, these are trees that are in thickets all along Beaver Creek in Camp Verde, way downstream from Jerome, and they have taken root everywhere, and they're very hard to get rid of. But that's the real story. I've heard this about Jerome, but I don't know if it's true, but it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to get a bank to finance a loan to buy a house here because everything's falling down all the time. And all these houses are kind of, you know, the dirt's eroding out from under them and it's all sliding. I've heard that the entire town slides downhill by about an inch a year. Now that they're not working the mines down there, it's not as quick, but it's still happening. It's still an issue.
It's probably nearly impossible to value this property too.
Yeah. But most of these houses are $500,000 and up. This was, for a while, the largest concrete building west of the Mississippi. This entire building is made out of poured concrete. Now it's a art cooperative gallery. I showed a piece in there a couple years ago.
That's cool. Was it just easier to pour concrete than bring in lumber?
Oh yeah, much easier. They made the concrete in Clarkdale at the bottom of the hill. So Clarkdale was full of concrete. It was in good supply around here. You just make them old and pour it, and you got your structure.
Sleepy little morning in Jerome. Wow, that's cool. That facade is just awesome.
I think great. Some of these are original, like this building was made out of concrete, and that's an original building. Some of them are built of pieces of other buildings. As buildings fell down or burned, they just get reappropriated. You take all the pieces of whatever fell down, and then you build something new with it, which is kind of what I do, like all the time.
I feel like everybody in Jerome likes heavy metal.
Certainly rusty metal. So, you know, we were just in Palm Springs. And one of the funny things about that is that Palm Springs is a place where they took a desert and made their dreams out of the desert with a blank canvas. Jerome, the canvas is already here. You've got all your falling down buildings and pieces of things, wreckage. So you build your dreams out of that. You build your wacky hippie dreams, all of this. Love all the old woodwork in there. In the Midwest or on the East Coast, none of that would last more than 50 years, but here it is over 100 years later and it's still intact. These used to be the stairs the kids would take to get to school. It's amazing how much they've slid in this amount of time. And a little disconcerting considering the people have newer houses here. I mean, again, this whole place is just going downhill. It's amazing to think of how much this has moved in just 100 years.
So this wasn't demolished, this just slid down the hill?
It's just, I believe it just kind of slid or was pushed off the side of the hill. You got more stairs up there. These are your average neighborhood street. You could slip and fall to your death up here.
It'd be like the John Wick scene where he just continually falls down the stairs on the hill.
It'd be a great place to shoot a John Wick scene.
But the view's good.
The view is insane. What's really funny is I'll go into one of these buildings and you go to an upper floor and look out the window and go, wow, the view's insane! And then you realize it's the same view you saw on the outside of the house.
What's the building up there?
Up top, tippy top, that's the Jerome Grand Hotel.
Is that the haunted hotel?
It was originally a hospital and then was left dilapidated for a long time, and then it was turned into a hotel later. A lot of these buildings have been many different things. They've been schools, they've been hotels, they've been residences, they've been hospitals. The neat thing about walking around these back streets is just how much interesting stuff you see. There's not a boring street in this town.
Not at all.
And I've walked every inch of them.
There's also not a straight, flat, or perpendicular street in this town.
Yeah, look at this retaining wall. How the hill is just pushing it out. This wall is what? 12, 15 feet high? Put a level against this, the whole thing's leaning out because the hill is just always pushing on it. Everything is always falling downhill, even if it's slow. And that's what's holding it back.
So is this one of the springs that feeds Jerome?
Yeah, yeah. There's a few of these that run down here, and everything that doesn't go into the water tanks comes down the creek. Which is why Jerome has lots of greenery.
What a cool house up there. I love all that siding.
Oh, it's great. And, you know, a lot of that siding is original, a lot of it's reclaimed. When I come here as a kid, a lot of these places were completely dilapidated and the roofs were open and you could see the old wiring in them and stuff. It's no wonder this town burned down like 3 times. You have uninsulated aluminum wiring, you have just every possible thing that can go wrong. You have houses built out of easily combustible materials. A lot of times the insulation is just wadded up newspaper, which, you know, if you want to start a fire, use old wood and wadded up newspaper, right?
This has a very like New Orleans vibe to it with all the greenery and
Yeah.
the balconies.
And I love how these stairs are just kind of barely holding together. You know?
It's the metaphor for Jerome.
It really is. It really is.
On a hill, barely holding together.
How cool is this place? I mean, it's like every house is a tree house.
Huh.
And unlike in Palm Springs, where the architecture is mandated by whatever people could think of to do, here the architecture is mandated by the landscape. Look at this. Look how steep this thing is. It's mandated by the steepness of the hill, where the streets have to go. You know, all of those things combine together to create the architecture for you. So you have houses with strangely angled decks and multi-stories. It's just what you have to build here if you want to build it all. Remember monkey bars like this? I don't have anything to say. I just want to sit up here and gaze about. This was hands down my kids' favorite playground when they were little. They wanted to go to Jerome and go to the playground. It's all old squeaky metal and super hot slides. If you're going to Jerome, you're going up and down a lot of stairs. One of the cool things about this is that right here, it's actually a place where you can sit outside and drink. You can drink alcohol here, only here. And you can listen to the music from the spirit room across the street. So you can come out here, have a beer, listen to the music. Don't have to sit in a crowded bar. Kind of nice. The aesthetics of trash are really interesting, aren't they?
They really are. The boarded up windows.
Yeah. Like,
And you only wonder what's inside of there.
Why do we like ruins so much? I mean,
Stories.
there's a perfectly nice building right across the street, but this one's in ruins. Why is that cooler and more interesting?
Because it has a story. It's not a suburban stamp.
And it has a story you have to find. You have to figure it out.
Choose your own adventure.
There's a puzzle.
With no clues.
You got some clues. Cool. We had such a great time exploring Jerome that we're going to have to break this up into a few episodes. In the next episode, we're going to talk to my friend Artis, who runs the Rickledorus candy shop in Jerome. Her grandfather was actually a miner in Jerome's heyday. So she has a lot of great things to tell us about. And that's all coming up in the next episode. Yes, give me a hug. It's been a long time.